question if you're a little bit worried, or I'm happy to. I'm on it now, so I'm just refreshing the page. So I'll just let you know that you're live. So if you
can you hear our dog screaming because we're not letting her in the room?
No, I can't. I can see you. I can see you guys. You're live.
Good. Okay.
Yeah,
so
so let me just categorize that and give it a few seconds, like I say, for just people to arrive. They can probably hear me now as well.
So you tell us when to hang up and start.
I'm going to hang up now because I think that people are getting there. So you can you see a counter in the corner? There's like an eye and the numbers just going up. It's at 61 now.
Oh.
Hang on. I hope I haven't just cancelled it. I've got one of these silly touch screen things. Can you still see us?
No, you're fine. I can still see you. The numbers going up. Yeah. So you've got about 100 people now. I'm going to go because they don't listen to me. They don't listen to you guys.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello, everyone. We just had a few technical issues there, which Layla very helpfully helped us out with.
So welcome to Sacred Gin. Actually, we do more than gin. We run a small distillery in Highgate in North London. I'm Ian Hart. This is Hilary Whitney. We're co-founders of Sacred Gin, which started about 11 years ago.
So today, first of all, so you've got something in your hand. We make several gins. This isn't the first gin we made, but today we're going to taste our pink grapefruit gin, which we think would be really nice because it's quite summery and it's got a lovely summery bottle. So we'll tell you a bit more about how it is actually made later, but very briefly, we do use vacuum distillation, which means that the botanicals are distilled at a lower temperature, makes it very smooth, very fresh. So taste a little bit by itself first of all, so you can taste how smooth it is.
And later we're going to make a fresh lime juice gimlet. So taste a little bit of our pink grapefruit gin, and then I'm going to make a smallish G&T, saving some of the pink grapefruit gin for our gimlet. So the garnish that we like, of course, is pink grapefruit, but perhaps a little bit more vibrant, a star ruby or red grapefruit, plus a sprig of rosemary. You can use thyme as well. Looks great, a little bit of tonic on top.
I would say don't add too much tonic because it's quite delicate and you don't want to ruin it. We have other gins where you can add a lot of tonic for a long drink, but this is just really nice. Thank you very much. Also put a sprig of rosemary in there.
Or you could use thyme.
Or thyme, but really nice.
So one of the interesting things about vacuum distillation, you pump the air out, and that means instead of boiling at about 85 to 95 centigrade, which is a typical atmospheric pressure pot still, typical copper still, we distill at around 25 to 30 centigrade. And one of the important things is that means you've got a lower temperature. Compare the smell of a fresh cut orange with a cooked marmalade flavour. The same with all sorts of stewed fruit. Fresh cut fruit smells and tastes very different from stewed fruit. That's the benefit of vacuum distillation. We have this super low temperature. We take organic Spanish and Italian pink grapefruit, mix them, macerate them with 60% English wheat spirits for 4 to 6 weeks. That's a seriously long time. Strain them and distill under vacuum. And our glass vacuum still, if you just steps aside, you might just be able to see part of our equipment here. So everything is glass. We use a little bit of PTFE stainless steel, so there's no copper. That means that the copper doesn't change the flavour at all. All you get is the organic, natural, fresh flavour of cut fruit. Nothing more, nothing less.
And something else I want to say about our pink grapefruit gin is I talk about our pink grapefruit gin to people sometimes and they go, oh, it's not pink. No, it's not pink because we don't add any artificial colouring or sugar or flavouring. It's all very, very natural and very beautiful, we think.
So our pink grapefruit gin is a variant on our classic gin, which is what we started with 10 years ago.
So speaking of which, I think we should explain how we started 10 years ago, well, 11 years ago. When we first started, you may or may not know that we started the distillery in our house in Highgate. And Ian had always been really keen on distilling. He'd been distilling, well, he can tell you.
I've been distilling in Highgate since I was about 11 years old. So quite a long time. It wasn't alcohol to start with because I was too young for that. But there's strange chemical things like oxides of nitrogen and chlorine, kind of weird and wonderful things. But I certainly picked up an interest in alcohol a couple of years later. So yes, now we're distilling, and I do have a natural feel for it.
So what happened was that it's about around 2008. Ian's always been very interested in food and drink and distilling, and he thought it'd be really nice to make a gin that was actually made in London by a Londoner. Now, of course, there's so many gins now, everyone knows about all kinds of gins. Every county town has a gin, every village, there are so many. But back then, actually, it was quite unusual. And at the time, when Ian first started distilling, I used to carry a little bottle of our first gin, the one that Ian showed you, around with me with some tasting cups for people to try. And I went to a press event, and there was a young colleague of mine who was about 25 at the time. He'd be quite a bit older now. And I said, "Oh, do you want to try my gin? Do you want to try my gin?" And he said, "Oh, okay. I don't really like gin." And then he tasted it, and he said, "Oh, it's really nice. It's really nice." He said, "But what are you going to do? No one drinks gin now." And of course, roll on 10 years, it's a completely different place. But when we first started, it was very different, and at first quite difficult to get our bottles placed in shops. But then we were very lucky. We had four breakthroughs. First of all, Ian used to take his gin every Sunday, his latest recipe, to the pub for the locals to try. That's the Wrestlers in Highgate.
Very local pub, and bit by bit they were tasting different recipes I was putting together. It's quite difficult starting from scratch to get the balance of juniper, the citrus, angelica, or all the other botanicals just right. Then luckily, recipe 23, the entire pub on a Sunday evening said, "That's a great gin," and importantly, different from other gins on the market. And the landlord, Martin Harley, said, "Ian, if you bottle that, I'll put it on the bar." And that's where we got our first break. So I've been unemployed for quite a while, and now we actually have a business that can pay the bills.
So after that, of course, we needed to get it into other places. And that was quite difficult because people would say things like, "I don't know, I don't want a homemade gin." It's kind of hard to explain that having a distillery, it's like the distillery is in your house rather than it's a homemade gin. It's quite hard to explain to people. But then we had another lucky break. We went to see Jerry's in Old Compton Street, which, if you don't know it, if you live in London, go and visit there. It's fantastic. And if you're ever visiting London, go and see them because it's a place worth visiting in its own right.
Institution, bartenders visit from all over the world. It's a fantastic Aladdin's cave.
And they gave us a great deal of help about how to sell it and agreed to take it. And we've been their best-selling gin for many years now. And then the next great stroke of fortune was that we went to see Alessandro Palazzi from Duke's Hotel. And he is known to make the best martinis in the world. He was at first, you could see he was a bit doubtful at first. He said, "Okay, I'll take some and then I'll let my customers try." And then a week later he rang and ordered a case, and we've become great friends, and we actually make some vermouth in collaboration with him, which has been fantastic. And then we were also taken on by Fortnum & Mason. So that was great to be able to say to people, those were great endorsements when you're going to try and get it into other shops, to say that those people think you've got a great product. So I think the next thing we're going to do, because the pink grapefruit is lovely in a G&T, but we are going to make a fresh lime gimlet for you.
So I love gimlets. They have a great history. Clearly they must have come from mixing gin with lime juice and sugar back in the great English naval days. But I think nowadays there's really two main streams of gimlet. One made with fresh lime juice, which is considered not traditional, though perhaps that might actually be deeply traditional, given hundreds of years ago fresh limes would have been available. And then I believe Rose's lime cordial was invented in the late 19th century, and the 20th century gimlet, the classic.
1867, it was invented 1867 for the Navy. Yeah.
Hilary must definitely prefer Rose's lime cordial gimlets in the Long Good Friday. No, what was it called? Long Goodbye. Sorry, not Good Friday. Excuse me. In Long Goodbye, Raymond Chandler has the mixes 50-50 lime cordial and gin, which nowadays is perhaps a bit sweet. The gimlet that Alessandro Palazzi makes for Hilary, which is one of her favourites, is a strange little drop of extra dry vermouth, 25% Rose's lime cordial and 75% gin, so a bit drier. And that's poured straight out of the freezer. Of course, you can stir over ice. My favourite, which is I'm going to show you how to make, is a third, fresh squeezed lime juice, simple syrup, and our pink grapefruit gin. And in fact, we went to a drinks festival a couple of years ago in San Diego, and we sold 2,700 of these. They were by far the biggest selling cocktail at the festival by almost a factor of 5 or 10. So I thought we'd show you this great use of our sacred pink grapefruit gin.
So I just want to quickly say, obviously I love Alessandro's gimlet very much, but this is a lovely drink too. And people think it's very historic because the Navy used to have lime juice to stop scurvy, and they put gin. The officers had gin with their lime juice. The sailors didn't. It was just the ranks. But that's why we're known as limeys, because we used to have lime juice.
Okay, so the first thing is simple syrup is not complicated. You take equal measures of water and sugar. I like to use fair trade cane sugar. Much as British sugar is great, and for some things, I think for drinks, you want fair trade cane sugar. Half and half. This is 50 mils and 50 mils to make approximately 100 mils. Very simple. Stir for 5 minutes, and miraculously, one that I made earlier appears. So the sugar is dissolved. So half and half. That simple syrup couldn't be simpler. Next, I'm going to squeeze. I take a stirring glass, which I put some ice in. During lockdown, I've made some of my own ice. I put it in trays in the freezer, and before it finishes freezing, the lovely clear ice around the edges, you can cut it out first. I'm going to stir this partly because I'm a bit ashamed of my shaking. So, okay. So I'm making one for Hilary as well. So I'm going to do 50 mils of fresh squeezed lime juice.
So I was going to say this cocktail, though I used to drink lime and gin in the Navy, it was first mentioned in a cocktail book in 1922, and then Raymond Chandler discovered it on a cruise when he'd written his first draft of The Long Goodbye, and he put it in his book, and he became quite addicted to gimlets, and he has 21 mentions in The Long Goodbye. That's quite a lot for one drink.
That was 50 mils of fresh squeezed lime juice.
Sorry everyone, I've interrupted Ian and he's lost his place.
My track. Okay, 50 mils of fresh squeezed lime juice. 50 mils of the simple syrup I showed how to make earlier. Apologies if you knew that already.
By the way, I don't know if anyone's asking questions, but we can't actually see them at the moment, so I'm really sorry about that, and we'll get back to you.
50 mils of sacred pink grapefruit gin. There we go. That's 150 mils. You may not have enough of that to do the full amount if you only save 25. I quite like to serve this in a cocktail glass with a wedge of lime over the edge. I believe Alessandro tends to use more like a shaving of peel. Anyway, whatever your favourite method is. So I measured it earlier. This glass takes about 150 mils, so this will probably fill right to the top. So the guys that work with us tell me that I should double strain anything made with citrus. I haven't got a double strainer here, so forgive me for single straining it today. The other thing I'd like to say is there's so much lime juice in this. This is surely more than just one of your 5 a day. It's very good for you. Okay, I can laugh at my pouring technique. Here we go. Fantastic. Nice and cold, very punchy. Shall I go first?
Yes, okay, you made it.
That is wonderful. I really love that. Can we go?
Mm-hmm.
As I say, Hilary prefers the proper Rose's Lime cordial version.
I still really like that. So if anyone's wondering why gin was unpopular for not unpopular, but not as popular as it is now. When I was a teenager and in my 20s, vodka was the thing. I think these things are cyclical. Fashions come round and round again. We tend not to drink what our parents drank, But I have to say, because now there are so many good gins on the market, and it's so different, there are so many different things you can try, and because there are so many different botanicals in the world, there are endless things you can do with gin, and also it's such a great spirit for mixing. It makes such great cocktails. It's such a great canvas, and it's a lovely drink in its own right.
95% of gin in this country is still consumed as a gin and tonic, so that's a bit of a left field cocktail. Though to me, I think a gimlet is definitely one of my favourite drinks and is becoming more and more popular, just like a Negroni is. So I'll tell you a bit about our other gins. We have the world's best Old Tom gin.
I'm just going to explain how the other gins came about, because we distill all our the gins in my face. Because we distill all our botanicals separately. That means that we can do quite a few different things, and we can be quite nifty and put our distillates in different drinks. So this is the Old Tom.
So for a long time, we held off making an Old Tom gin, which essentially is one of the main gin styles that existed before London Dry. Not surprisingly, it's actually quite sweet. There's two main methods of sweetening an Old Tom gin. Firstly, you can use the obvious sugar, and we do use a little bit, again, of cane sugar, fair trade cane sugar, but also distilled licorice root, strangely, is actually quite sweet without any sugar in it at all. So we use a bit of both. In addition, we've bumped the ABV on this up to 48%, so it's really very punchy. We had a great formula working, and then right at the end, Alexander, who works for us, suggested, I'm putting it in front of your face again, sorry.
No, I was looking at that.
Alexander Jeffries, who works for us, suggested we try some fresh cut distilled organic orange peels, and we put quite a lot in, like 15 grams per litre, and that transformed it into a wonderful, wonderful version of Old Tom. So it's almost like a zesty, fresh cut citrus, high ABV, double sweetened version of a classic, which really is a sort of 18th, 19th century kind of drink. Makes a great Martinez. Gin and tonic, we like it with Fever Tree aromatic. And we actually got, would you believe, World's Best Old Tom award for this one. So quite unlike other Old Toms with that extra vacuum distilled, fresh cut orange zest. Thank you very much, AJ.
And again, I said don't put too much tonic with this, or have this in a gimlet, because it's very delicate. So this you can add lots of ice, lots of tonic, and you'll still taste it.
So this is a cardamom gin. About 7 or 8 years ago, we were producing something you might call a gin blending kit, where you get a little bottle of distilled pure juniper, a little bottle of distilled pure grapefruit, a separate bottle still of cardamom, separate bottle still of just coriander seed distillate, and so on, all the different botanicals. As we did our tastings where people would blend their own recipes, we realized that 2 or 3 of them were massively popular just as standalones. Cardamom, pink grapefruit, not surprisingly, were 2 of the main ones. And so bit by bit, we developed a gin with predominantly vacuum distilled green Guatemalan cardamom, organic as well, as its main botanical. So slightly on the fringes of what London Dry really is, but nevertheless, this is a fantastically popular cardamom gin. It has all of the rest of botanicals as well, such as juniper, orris angelica, and so on. But over 90% of the botanical load on this is cold, vacuum distilled cardamom. It loses any trace of bitterness. It's just fragrant, wonderful. And if you feel like a pint of gin and tonic without getting a little bit rat-assed, what you might do is put 25 mils only into a pint glass, fill it up with ice, top it up with tonic water. You've got quite a powerful G&T without falling over the barbecue. So there we go. This is quite an interesting gin for a hot day. Sacred Cardamom Gin.
And it's also very nice with ginger ale or ginger beer, or in a espresso martini. And I just wanted to say that I haven't told you why we're called Sacred Gin, and we're called Sacred Gin because all our products have a tiny little bit of frankincense in them, which is Boswellia sacra. And we're sort of changing our labels now, but in our original classic label, it's hard to see, put it there. So that's all sorts of references, but apparently there's a serpent that guards the Boswellia sacra bush, and so there's a little serpent's head there. We've got some hearts for Ian Hart. I was a journalist, so the hinges on the gate are pen nibs. There's some, I'll probably put my hand over it, sorry. There's some flasks there because of the vacuum distillation. There's a key because the recipe is a secret. And there are birds because we come from leafy Highgate. So there you go. There's more on there too, but
So we have a discount code today, don't we?
there is a discount code, which off the top of my head I can't remember, but I think it's in your booklet. And the other thing is, very excitingly, we have moved out of the house where we had the distillery, and we're moving into a new distillery, come bottle shop and tasting room on Highgate High Street. We hope to have a soft launch on Wednesday, but that's not definite, and it's quite small as well. So,
So next week we'll be doing all the final dusting and sweeping and connecting all the lights up. So we're hoping to open our new distillery on Highgate High Street, number 50, on Wednesday, which I think is the 10th. It might be Thursday or Friday, but we're really aiming for Wednesday.
But it will be definitely open by July, and watch our website to get proper dates. And as soon as all the social distancing thing has finished, we will be having events there like we had in the past. So thank you very much for watching us. If you've got questions, we will be answering them. But as we're a bit like the lady from Silent Pool, we can't talk and read at the same time. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we're going to end it now. Thank you for watching, everybody.